I'd like to welcome you back. This will be tape number 2 in the 6-part series. And we're dealing this time with a title called Pastor, I'm Gay. This is for pastors, teachers, anybody that is dealing with the population that comes to them for counseling and reveals a truth that probably the pastor never suspected. I'm gay. The realities are, they're looking at people who are totally and completely broken at this point. They don't know how to handle the problem, but they know they have one. I remember the first time that I ever told anybody that I had a problem. It was the most fearful thing that I had ever done in my life, because that person was my parent. The next person I had to tell was my pastor. Went into the pastor, we sat down. He said, "How can I help you? What's your problem?" I said, "Pastor, I'm gay." And he got this look on his face like, "Oh, what am I going to do with this?" Most pastors today, most teachers today, and a lot of counselors today don't know how to react to that initial statement. Most parents today don't know how to react to that initial statement. I'm gay. It's like a bombshell that drops out of the sky on you. The one you loved is not what you thought they were. And they're telling you that their whole future is lost. Because that's what most people think happens when somebody comes in and says, "I'm gay." It means I can never have a family. I can never have friends. I can always be looked at sideways by the church. There's a real problem here. "Pastor, I'm gay." Or, "Pastor, I think I'm gay." Or, "Pastor, I've got this problem and I don't understand what it is." Now, probably this is going to happen to a youth pastor more than some of the senior pastors, because the young people today are taught in schools that what they're feeling is okay. But then they come to church and they read certain texts, they read everything that they've ever learned, they read in Scripture as a problem, and they find out that God isn't really happy with this gay lifestyle. I'm going to call it same-sex attraction now, because, gay is out of place now. We've gone to same-sex attraction now. We've progressed. And it simply means that I'm like everybody else, but I'm just attracted in a different direction. And the pastor sits there and he hears this and he says, "How am I going to handle this problem?" Most pastors at seminary, and I was told by a couple of pastors that at their seminary the common way to handle the problem was pass it off. Parlance of football, punt. Give it to another team. Let the psychologist handle it. Let the psychiatrist handle it. But basically it's a spiritual problem. And we have to face it as pastors, as teachers, as young people workers, youth leaders. We have to look at it and handle the problem from the perspective that we've got to solve something for this person. We've got to give him some hope. Because the church is a place where people come for hope. I remember the first time I was ever disfellowshipped from a church. I walked into a board meeting. It was kind of an emergency board meeting. I had recently come home from far away, California. I lived in Maine, about as far as you can get. I came home. They had a board meeting. I went, stood up. The pastor said, "I just want to ask you one question. You can answer me any way you wish. Are you homosexual?" Well, my mind went immediately to, "You've made up your mind," because I was scared of that answer. I could have told him, I have these attractions, same-sex attractions. I don't act on them. I don't go out anymore and go to the gay bars. I don't go out anymore and cruise the streets. I don't actively recruit other people. But he said, are you homosexual? So I tried the answers. I said, well, I have some feelings, yes. But I don't understand the feelings all the time, and I never act on them. About an hour later, the board took a vote, and I found a new church home. Because they couldn't have this problem within their denomination. The pastor had never come and talked to me ahead of time about it. We had never had the conversation. He just took it straight to the board. And we wonder why some of the people that we deal with don't go to the pastor and talk. Because he only has one alternative. He has to take that information somewhere, we think. And he doesn't know how to deal with the problem. All right, pastor, someone comes in and says, I'm gay. I have same-sex attraction. Who are you really looking at? Who's that person on the other side of your desk? Well, he's the same person that he was before he told you. He hasn't changed. He's still the one that likes to work for the church. He's still the one that sings in the choir. He's still the one that enjoys the Christian music. He's still the one that wants fellowship. But he just has this same-sex attraction that the whole world seems to think is wrong, and the church definitely thinks is wrong. And he comes and he lays that burden on you. How are you going to handle it? What are you going to say? How do you give him hope? The first thing that you have to do is realize who you're talking to and what he just risked in telling you the deepest secret of his heart. He knows that if anybody finds out, he's gone. He knows that if the congregation finds out, they're going to let him come, they're going to let him sing, they're going to let him worship, but they don't want him sitting in the same pew with their children. They don't want him actively taking part because he is this problem. He has risked everything to reveal a problem to you. Now, what do you mean by everything? The young person went to his father, said, Dad, I think I'm gay. Father's reaction, all gay people should be shot. That's an actual case, actual statement of a friend of mine. And it was years before the father and son could ever communicate again. Other reactions are equally strong. Oh, what did we do wrong? What have we done wrong? How did you become this? Why don't you just change? You risk losing everything. You go to the workplace. It becomes known that you're a little light in the loafers. Old term, I'm an old man. What happens? You become the joke around the water cooler. Nobody considers you equal to them anymore. You lose everything. They had to make a law in this country to say that you can't fire anybody because of it. Actually, the law is not made yet. They're trying to get the law made. The Gay and Lesbian Task Force people are out doing their best to get a law made that says you can't fire me just because I have same-sex attractions. But as of this moment, if your employer thinks that you're that different, he can find an excuse to let you go. And you know, after the law is passed, they're still going to find an excuse to let you go. In some places in this country, worse things happen to you. Gay bashing is the in thing in some places. Now, the gay agenda has made inroads into getting acceptance for people that have the problem. But they're doing it from a standpoint of, I am normal. I'm as normal as you are. I just have a different attraction. But you as a pastor have a different problem. How do you tell that person that God does not reject him? Especially when he's read these texts that says it's an abomination. How do you as a pastor, you as a youth leader, you as a teacher, tell this person God loves you, but I really don't want to hug you? Does this sound drastic? Does this sound like something that could not happen? Happens in every church in the United States today. If you have 100 members in your church and you think that you don't have a gay population in your church or a person in your church that has same-sex attractions, you're in denial. Because they're here. And everybody knows it. But nobody will acknowledge it. It's that elephant sitting in the pew that nobody looks at. Same thing with pornography addiction. Same thing with sexual addiction. There are certain things that we as pastors and teachers and leaders look at and say, not in my church, not in my congregation. There's no way that this could be here. But pastor, they're here. Teacher, they're here. Your students are having those problems. And I can tell you why. Because in our society today, we have done away with the family unit. We have reduced the male factor in the family unit so that the man is no longer the head of the house, and the boys have nothing to mold and to follow and to become like as a guide. They don't have a good role model anymore. And even if they had it, somewhere along the line, somebody may have done something to your child and you don't know it, and he grew up with an attraction that you don't understand. But it's here. So pastors, teachers, youth leaders, it's here. But how do we handle it? The fact that you're looking at this tape is the first step in handling it. You at least have said, maybe it's here. All right, honestly tell me, pastor, teacher, leader, is there anybody here that doesn't know somebody that has the problem? Do you know somebody? Yeah, my congregation. Oh, I wouldn't be so sure. Because somebody in some other congregation says, yeah, they're not in my congregation. They're sitting over there at that church, and they're talking about your church and your school. And with the media the way it is today, and with the education system the way it is today, the textbooks in this country today are being changed as we speak to reflect the fact that this is okay, kids, try it. It's almost a fad thing among some of the kids. I want to try it. Well, you know, a percentage of that say it's a fad and I want to try it actually find out that they like it. In fact, not only do they like it, they become addicted to it. And there's always some older person around that's willing to say, oh, I feel so sorry for you. Come with me to my house. I'll show you how to handle it. It's here. It's now. I can't emphasize it enough. It scares me to death, and I've been living with it for 60 years. Because what used to be just a dream, the normalcy of the gay lifestyle used to be a dream, a fantasy, has been brought to reality. And Pastor, you're facing it right now. In fact, there's a whole theology. You can go to some churches in this country today, and they will open their Bible and take the same text that you say condemn homosexuality and turn it right around and call good evil and evil good, and they make it so that there's absolutely no difference between you and them, and you can't judge them. Oh no, thou shalt not judge. Trouble is, God judges. God has made a statement about these things. God has made a statement that's put sin lists, in fact, 4 or 5 of those sin lists, that say, these things are wrong. Lying is wrong. Stealing is wrong. Adultery is wrong. Homosexuality is wrong. Oh, you're going to offend somebody. And in Canada, if I said this and went up there and preached, I could be arrested for saying homosexuality is wrong. And it's coming to this country. I was recently invited to speak in Munich. They had to cancel the conference because the laws changed. And you could not say what I have to say. There is a problem, and it's wrong. In fact, the whole culture that we live in today has decided that there is no wrong. It's only how you perceive it. Well, God doesn't say it's wrong for no reason. God laid down some very simple rules for mankind. And He says, this is one of the problems that if you get involved in it, is going to destroy your home, is going to destroy your family, is going to destroy your life. And God had the audacity to use the words, thou shalt not, in front of it. Now, do I sound too strong? Am I offending you? This is a problem. People are dying because of this problem. When I was growing up in the gay lifestyle, and for several years after I finished school, living a double life, I knew people, a lot of people, that went to these bars and did these things and lived the double life just like I did. And you know what? They're all dead today. Except me. And it scares me because I can't think of one of those people that I actually was connected with and learned to appreciate for the beauty of their minds, for their ability, for their intelligence. I can't think of one of them that's alive today. Actually, I can think of one other one. He's the person that helped start a ministry with me. He and I are both free from the problem for 30 years. But the normal gay population says, oh, it's wrong, go ahead and try it. But what they don't tell you is the rate of AIDS among that population is so high that their normal lifespan is only about 50 years, while the rest of the population is 70 years. It scares me. Pastor, what are we going to do? Here you've got a young person standing in you, or sitting in front of you, praying with you, begging you to say something that they're going to know they can be accepted and loved. And what do you tell them? Now, I sound a bit excited. It's because I see children dying. And I see the laws of this country coming forth that make it possible for more children to die. And I see our churches sitting back and having somebody say, oh, did they pass that law? I didn't know that was there. We're sleeping at the switch. It's the one thing that brought me from my normal life. After 30 years of dealing with this, my normal life did not really need to have more speeches, more time up, more lectures, more books, more... I need to let the young folks do this, but it scares me to death because nobody's doing it. The pastors aren't saying what's right. They don't know how to handle it. Now, the person that you have in front of you, the feelings that he has are absolutely real to him. If the right person walked through the door, his eye would do exactly what the normal straight person's eye would do if he met an attractive female. His eye would look, and his eye would look, and his brain would function, and he would imprint, and he would have a desire. The feelings are absolutely 100% real in this person that's sitting there next to you. And Jesus says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Where did that come from? You see, the mind has to be renewed. The mind of the pastor has to be renewed. The mind of the church board has to be renewed. The mind of the youth leader has to be renewed. Now, we all have problems. We all have sins. We all admit that we're human. And we all say that God can perform miracles, and He does. But today, the world is saying God can't help this problem. If you're a drug addict, it says you can be helped. If you're an alcoholic, they say you can be helped. But if you're a porn addict or a sex addict, they say, boy, that's a tough one. And if you are a constitutionally gay person, impossible. Except there's no such thing as a constitutionally gay person, a person that was born with a gene that made him gay. There's nothing in the literature showing that that is a possibility. That is a manufactured illusion from somebody's brain that said, oh, if we get them thinking like they are absolutely born this way and we can't change, then they won't pick on us nearly so much. We won't hate ourselves. You want to hear the good news? God loves every one of those children that's lost to that lifestyle as much and more than He loves you. And He wants them back. There's a text that I will give you the treasures of darkness. I will break the bars of iron. I'll release the prisoners. God wants them back, and He's promised to give them back. And God promised me when I was 14 years old, He said, He that hath begun a good work in you will finish it. And He did. And He is still doing it. Because I discovered that gay was just the tip of the iceberg. Sex is not the problem. Gay is not the problem. The problem is much deeper. The other 90% of the iceberg is down there, and we all need help melting that iceberg. So God's going to work with us. So Pastor, what do you do when you're sitting there and you're looking over your desk and there's a young person out there that really believes that every time he looks at another male, he's going to have an attractive reaction? And all he really needs is for you to love him. For you to tell him the truth that brought you freedom from whatever addiction you had. And the ability to sit in your pew and not be looked at sideways. I sound a little harsh. Maybe it's because I went through some harsh times with different churches. But the church is the hospital for sinners. The trouble is, we don't let them in. And if they come in, they scare us and we drive them back out. All right, enough of this ranting and raving. The person in front of you has issues. God issues. The fact that he came to the youth leader, the pastor, the teacher, and even brought up the fact that he was gay means that he is willing and ready and able to at least look at the issues that he had. But the first issue that he is going to have to look at is, I hate God. Because God made me the joke. I remember I was 10 years old. I was climbing trees, running in the woods with a bunch of boys. We were having a good time. And I climbed up in a tree and I was sitting on the branch and I started doing something that they looked at me and they said, oh, you're a pervert, you're a homosexual, you're a gay guy. Never did that again. I learned to hide. I learned to live the lie. God says you know the truth will make you free. Once you come to the place in your life, once that person on the other side of your desk reaches a place where he will come and talk to you, you can tell him, I understand. Because your body is telling you one thing. Your mind is telling you one thing. But the reality is, God didn't create you this way. It's not God's fault. But I hate God. I hate God for the man that abused me. I hate God because somebody taught me this thing. I hate God because my father wasn't what I should be, or my mother was more dominant than she should have been, or my sisters thought they could control my life. And God didn't take me out of it then. So we're dealing with a God issue here. And the reason is this. If your father takes the place of God in your life, think about this for a moment. If your father is the God image in the early part of your life, When you first begin to think of the most powerful person you know, you look at your father and you think, this is him. And he rejects you. Or you think he rejects you. You see, I thought my father rejected me. My father was a woodsman. My father went into the woods for weeks at a time. And he abandoned me, according to my brain. Reality? Did my father abandon me? No, he went out to make a living to make sure that I had everything that I ever wanted. My mother did everything she could do, but my mind misinterpreted all of that, and I ended up saying, God, if you're like my father, I don't want you. So there's a real God issue. God gets the blame when he has nothing to do with a rejection. Because our minds play tricks on us. Our picture of God is totally unreal. So we got to find the real God. That's the first thing that you have to communicate to that person behind the desk. That young person has to understand that his view of the world and God and family is not reality. And until you can convince him, or till you can awaken in him a thought that says, maybe I've got a little misconception here, nothing will happen to change his reality or perception of himself. Do you understand that? The first thing that you have to do is come to the place where that person can understand a true loving God. Now, let me ask you this, pastors. Do you know a true loving God? Do you know a God that pulled you out of a pit so deep? Remember Corrie ten Boom? There's no pit so deep that God cannot go deeper. Do you know that God? Do you know the God that comes to you when you're totally destroyed and picks you up and carries you on his shoulders? Because that's the God that the person in front of you at your office, in your desk, that's that young person, that's the person that God has brought to you for you to share himself with. You can't share what you don't have. So the first place that you begin, dear pastor, is by sharing your God. And this kid is liable to say, I don't believe you. So you've got to be real. Some good friends of mine taught me something very recently. They use a phrase at their church that says, be real. The only way a person can understand that you love him is if you become real with him. Jesus came and dwelt among us and became one of us and was real with us. And how real was he? He was real enough to walk up to a leper and touch him. But we shun the homeless, and we shun the poor, and we shun the needy, and we shun the gays, and we shun the... You know, there's levels of depravity, gay, that we don't even talk about in our church, and most people don't even know about. Be real. Do you know your real God? Can you share that real God with this person that you're dealing with? Do you realize that that person is living a total lie? And his survival depends upon you sharing the total truth. And the truth is, God could touch a prostitute and say, I don't condemn you anymore. God could touch a leper and say, you're okay. Be healed. The power of the Holy Spirit could speak through Peter when he walked up to the gate and said, I don't have gold or silver, but what I've got I want to give you. Stand up and walk in the name of the God that made me stand up and walk. The one that pulled me off the fishing boat. The one that, when I threw my nets in, the fish came so much that they burst the net. Can you make your God so real to this person sitting in front of you that they can get hope from you? Because if you don't, that young person is going to go through a life of hell and rejection and sorrow and heartache. But if you can give him a view of the real God, just like Jesus came down here and gave you a view of the real God, that person is going to be part of your family forever. There is nothing more joyous than seeing a group of alcoholic, drug addict, prostitute, gay, homosexual, depraved people singing and praising God in the same room and saying to each other, God pulled me out of a pit. You know Psalm 40 as well as I do. I waited patiently for the Lord, and He reached down to me and He pulled me out of the miry clay, and He set my feet on a rock, and He established my goings, and He put a new song in my heart. What song do you sing to the gay child sitting in front of you? You sing the song of redemption. You sing the song that Jesus loves me, this I know. Except you become His little children. That child's perspective of God is distorted. And God said, get out of the way, Pastor. Let me shine through you. I like to think of it that God brings us from a deeper pit, a darker pit, to make us a brighter light. Because the more you know your God, the brighter your light can be anywhere. And when that child is sitting in front of you saying, Pastor, I think I'm same-sex attracted, you can say to him, son, God didn't create no junk. God didn't create a mistake. All these things that you feel in your life can be changed. You can grow up and you are a son of God. You are a child of Him. And when you think you're a child of God, you're not a child of that distorted father image that you had in your head. You're a child of the God that said, I love Him so much that I'm going to send my own son down there and let Him go through everything so that He could understand everybody, so that He can feel your infirmities, so that He can plead your case, so that He can pick you up and let you walk in love with Him. And I love you. I remember the first time I found out that God really loved me as an adult. I had run away from home. I was at the point in my life where I was going to get in or get out. Now you remember I told you that God gave me a text when I was young, He that began a good work and you will finish it. But it wasn't finished immediately. And I had a lot of setbacks in my life. And I ran away from home, and I left my beautiful wife and my 2 children, and it vanished one day. Just got on a plane and left. I had been working, and I was looking for an address, and I went to a library to find the address. In those days, we didn't have this internet thing where you can type in an address and get, well, you got where you want to go. You had to go to the library and get the reverse directory to get the street address that goes with the telephone number, and you could find who you wanted. And I walked into the library, and on the counter of the library was a book. And the title of the book got my attention. It said, The Lord is my shepherd, and He knows I'm gay. Whoa, that was a new one. I grabbed that book off the counter, sat down, and for the next 3 hours I devoured that book. And one day later I parked my car at the airport and vanished. Because I was going to the place where that man was that said, the Lord is my shepherd and He knows I'm gay. I had to find out if God really did accept me. That was the first thing I had to find out. Pastor, he'd disfellowship me. If I told my board, they'd throw me out. If I told my wife, she already had some pretty good ideas, that I was in real trouble, that I was obsessed, that I was leaving home in the morning and driving 2.5 hours to a major city for a 15-minute fling in the combat zone and coming back home and saying, oh, I had a bad day at the office and didn't sell anything. I couldn't tell them. Maybe I could tell this guy in California. And I got an airplane and I went down to New York and landed that airplane and got on a bus and went 6 days to California. Didn't take a jacket, didn't take a coat, didn't take anything, just went. Because I had to find out if God really loved me. I had a focus in my life. I knew He was going to solve my problem. I just didn't know how, I didn't know who I could talk to about it. And I focused on, I'm going to find out. And I went to California. I remember coming down the mountainside in California at 6 o'clock in the morning. The mountain was on fire, just the way they had them here this last year. Pieces of California burn up every year. It's nothing new. It's beautiful at night. The whole mountainside is glow with pink. We came down the side of the mountain, drove into Los Angeles, stopped at the bus stop, and I suddenly realized how to find a place. I didn't have the book. Well, the question was, how do you find a gay church in the middle of Los Angeles? Well, that's easy. You go to a pornography shop. Yeah, pornography. You see, they have directories there. The Underground Lifestyle has a directory that will tell you where to go. And I went over, and on the counter of the pornography shop across the street from the bus station, there was a directory. And I opened it up, and I put my finger down, and it landed right on the name of that church. And you may have one of those churches in your town today, because that group of churches has grown nationwide. And they have thousands of members. And they firmly believe that they are loved by God as much as anybody else. And God accepts them as they are, and they don't have to change. That's the gay theology. I can go with the first 3 parts, but when I get to they don't have to change, I find a little bit of a roadblock there. You see, God does love you the way you are. God does take care of you the way you are. God does have a plan for your life. God has given you everything that you want, and that person is sitting in front of you today, and you've got to communicate it to him, Pastor. And you don't have to send him to a psychiatrist or a psychologist to tell him God loves him. I remember getting there. First thing in the morning, Thursday morning, 6 o'clock. Picked up the telephone, dialed the number. Wonderful lady answered. I remember her to this day. Beautiful girl. She says, "Are you gay?" "I am." And then she said, "Oh, I don't care. Come on down." I said, "Where are you?" She said, "Right around the corner from where you're sitting." And I walked 2 blocks around the corner, and I found the front door of that gay church in California. Now, this was so far back that gay marches were just a thing of the present. The first one ever held, I took part in. I sang on the steps of City Hall in Los Angeles in the gay choir. I'm getting ahead of myself. Went around the corner, found the girl. I said, "I found this book. I didn't understand it." She says, "I know. We have people coming from all over the country that have found that book." That Sunday I sat in a church with 500 gay men, and they cheered because I was there. When is the last time in your church you cheered because a sinner was there? And he could openly say, "This is my problem." And you could openly say, "This is God's solution." And I knew God loved me because they almost hugged me to death. Now, God was performing miracles for me at that time. I thought I would never see my home again. I knew I would never see my home again. I had abandoned my wife. The worst thing I ever did in my life was abandon my wife and children. And I have to apologize every time I think about it to her. Because I put her through the hell of rejection that I was going through. I got to the church. Met the pastor. They called him in at 6 o'clock in the morning. The pastor actually got up at 6 o'clock in the morning and came to the church because I was there. pastors. And I unloaded on him a lifetime of sin, a lifetime of mistakes, a lifetime of heartache. I had reached a point where I was hemorrhaging to death. Every few years I would bleed. I've had 4 small bowel resections, 58 transfusions, because you can't live 2 lives. Your body rebels. And that's the person that's sitting across the desk from you, Pastor. That's where he's heading. I had to go to California to find a church, and the only church I could find was a gay church. Well, they said I could stay there. I had to go get a job. At least I had to go apply for a job. They said, you're not going to get one. You just need to go out and apply, and when you come back at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we'll have a halfway house for you. We have clothes for you. We have food for you. We have a place to sleep for you. They have everything for their people. What do we as churches have for our people? Up here, I'm trying to knock on the door that says we're having a crisis with our children. They think, and they've been told, and they've been taught something that is absolutely a lie. At 10 o'clock in the morning, I left the church, looking for a job. The man said, you weren't going to find one. Nobody with this fresh in Los Angeles ever finds a job because you don't have an address. But I went out and looked. I walked out the front door of the church and I said, God, you brought me here. I know you brought me here. I feel like I'm loved here. I know I'm going to be accepted here. Give me a job, please. Thank you. I walked 1 block. There was a sign on a parking lot. Attendant needed. Walked over, filled out the application. He said, well, I can't hire you here. But I do have a position down at the, well, I won't give the name, the largest hotel in the city of Los Angeles for a valet parker. And you make tips and a salary. The one thing I didn't have was cash. I had $6 to my name after running away from home. And I was lucky to have that. And I got a job that gave me tips. He said, can you start this afternoon? Yeah. I turned around, went back to the church, and they said, did you quit already? And I said, no, God gave me a job. Wait a minute. How can God send you to a gay church and then give you a job if you're one of these people? Because He loves you. And He loves that person sitting across the desk from you. And He loves that other pastor that's giving up his family to go and live in the gay lifestyle. And you as a pastor can't even reach out to him, and he's one of your clergymen. That happened very recently right here in the city I live in. The church abandoned him. Actually, he abandoned the church? I don't think so. But you don't stay where you're not wanted. You can't live where you're totally condemned. There's got to be a love factor in here somewhere. And they accepted the fact that God had performed a miracle for me. I'll tell you another miracle that happened there. I was waiting that Sunday in church, the first time I'd seen them, and they sang that beautiful song, Alleluia. Right after they welcomed me, they all stood up and they sang Alleluia, Alleluia. I can't even sing that song today without crying. Because they loved me. Praise to God. Alleluia. The person that wrote next in front of me turned around and said, would you like to go to a game show? Hey, I'm in California, right? The land of fruits and nuts. Bad joke. Sure, I want a game show. I've never seen one. I'm in Hollywood. Gave me a ticket, said, I'll meet you there. It's going to happen tomorrow morning. I worked in the afternoons, so tomorrow morning was good. Next morning I got up, stepped outside, and you know what? It isn't always sunny in sunny California. Sometimes it rains, and in February or October, when I was there, October, November, It rained and it was cold. And I hadn't brought a coat with me. The only thing I had on was a light sweater. But I got on the bus and I shivered and I said, God, I really would appreciate a coat somehow. Thank you. Went down to the game show. Well, you know, in these game shows, I still remember it was the Match Game with Gene Rayburn. Now I'm dating myself way back. This was 1976, by the way. They give away door prizes at these game shows. People come in, they have their tickets, and on the seat there's a number, and you sit there and they pull your number. And in the intermission, when they were taping the show, they came out and they started pulling numbers, and they pulled the first one. It was a $100 bill. And I said, boy, could I use that. Didn't get it. Then it was a $50 bill. I couldn't get that. It was 25. It was 10. After about 15 prizes, they finally got down to the last one, and they pulled my number and handed me a new jacket. I said the Match Game all over the back, but I didn't care. I had asked God that morning for a jacket, and a jacket appeared that afternoon. Before you ask, I will answer, and I'm taking you down a journey. God said He was. Where's that journey leading for this young person sitting in front of your desk, dear pastor? God's going to take care of him if he will focus on God. You've got to give him the God to focus on. They handed me a jacket. I stayed there for 3 months. October, November, and December. I went to everything that I could go to. I saw all the things that I could possibly imagine within the gay lifestyle, and these are things that would scare the life out of some of you. I saw the worst of it. And I lived there. And the Sunday morning before Christmas, I remember sitting in the church, and the pastor stood up and he said, you know, I've got a miraculous thing to tell you today. I have helped to lead a person from the S&M lifestyle, the lifestyle of whips and chains and pain, which is darker than the homosexual lifestyle according to them, to a normal gay lifestyle. He had a normal gay experience. Translated, the pastor had a date. But God said to me, click. If he can bring somebody from the S&M lifestyle to a normal gay experience, he can take you from here and put you back over here in a normal straight experience. And it was like a $100 light bulb went off in my head. The next thing out of the pastor's mouth was, it's getting to be Christmas time, and some of you have families at home and you've given up your responsibility. And you need to go back and you need to take that responsibility. This pastor did not know that God was speaking through him. But my brain said, click. You got to go home. You've got to try to gain back that wife that you abandoned, those children that you abandoned. You've got to go take responsibility for your own life and the life of your family. And after church, I made 2 phone calls. One was to the airport. How much does it cost to get from Los Angeles to Maine? $260. Sounded like $1 million. I had my job. I was making tips enough to live. I had, by that time, gotten my own apartment. Everything was progressing, but I didn't have any extra. But I picked up the phone and I dialed my wife. The wife that I had not talked to but twice in 3 months. And said, if you'll have me, I want to come home. And my wife said, I have 2 things to tell you. Number 1, a lady just left the house that handed me an envelope. And she said, you do what's best for your family with this money. But she said there's only $260 in the envelope. But if that'll bring you home, you come home. And the next thing she said was, by the way, just before you left, I got pregnant. My son was on the way. And I boarded a plane. And Christmas Eve, 1976, I stepped off the plane, and my daughter rushed into my arm and said, I told everybody you'd be home, but they didn't believe me. You know, God answers everybody's prayer, from the smallest to the ones that make the biggest mistakes. And so I ended up at home. You see, God had a plan. God took me down a route. The person sitting in front of you as a pastor has a plan, planned by God Himself. And you're part of that plan. And it's your responsibility to share with Him the God that has that plan. You've got to tell Him what Jeremiah said, before I formed you in the belly, I knew you. Even the hairs of your head are all numbered. I have plans for good and not evil for you. And I'm going to live them out in you. And you've got to invite that person into your heart and into your congregation. And your congregation has got to stop being in denial and love that person so much that he will never leave. The men of your congregation have got to form men's groups to take these boys and men that are having this problem, and they may not even know in the group that the person has the problem, but they've got to show them how to be men. You've got to grow them up, nurture them. Show them what manhood is. It's a rule of psychology. A boy is not a man until his father tells him he's a man. You've got to take the place of his father. And you've got to tell him he is a man. And he is acceptable. And he has wonderful gifts. And he has talent beyond belief. And all of these problems can be solved. And the men in your church can nurture him. It's an opportunity that is higher than no other calling, to take these children that are fatherless and turn them into young men. Ladies, the same thing goes for the women. God said, love your children. Become as little children. Raise these people up. Hold them up. Praise me with them, because they're going to become a brighter light that will shine in a darker place. And they can reach out. And you as a pastor can reach out. And you can love these people. Well, what happens if they goof? What do I do? You still love them. You still take care of them. Sometimes we as a church have a bad habit. It's like babies, you know. Anybody that has a baby knows that now and then the baby has an accident, you got to change the diaper. We invite these young people into our churches, and some of them goof, and they have an accident. So what do? Change the diaper? No. We throw out the baby. And we take the diaper and we stick it on the wall, and we say, this is the reason why we didn't want them here in the first place. Pastor, that baby is sitting in front of you at your desk. Teacher, he is there. Youth leader, he is there. And he is asking you, how do I become a normal person loved by God? And you start out, you're already loved by God. And God had a plan to make you a normal person. And we're going to help you. And we're going to love you. And we're not going to kick you out. And we're not going to call you a stupid sinner, because guess what? I told a lie yesterday. And I'm not a stupid sinner. Oh, I am? And my wife gossips to me, and I gossip right back, but God said gossip, the tongue. You see, your sin is no different than any other sin. Your problem is no worse than any other problem. I've got a solution. This is what God says. He says, "Come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden and burdened and tied down and abused and neglected, and I will give you rest. You can lean your head on my chest and I will love you." And pastors, can we take those same children and love them as much? Even if they make the mistakes 7 times 70 times 70 times 7. Can we love those children back to the person that God wants them to be? Because they will grow up. They will grow out of this problem. They will mature. They used to say that the gay problem was an arrested development, which means it got this far and it stopped. And you're going to take down the stop sign. You're going to say, "Come on over here. God has got better things for you." And he's going to grow once he sees that his misunderstanding of God is cured when he looks at you and the members of your church. You're going to give him possibilities beyond measure because he's your child. God led him to your church. God led him to your youth group. God led him to watch this tape and say, "I saw that tape and I want what's there." And God will give it to you. He gave it to me. He led me home. He took me back to my family. And my wife and I are still married after 35 years. And I have 3 children and I have 6 grandchildren. And every one of them has sin problems, believe it or not. And I love them all. And I don't reject any of them for any reason. That's what God wants from his family, from his church, from his pastor, from his congregation. Nothing less than total love. And God can give that to you, to give to that child. "You shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free." Well, the truth is God loves everybody, even those that are having sex attractions. He might even love those that go into the deeper sins beyond that. Matter of fact, he does. And God said, "You love them too. Because you've got a work to do. I didn't put your church there so you could come and sing happy songs. I didn't put that church where it is because you need to just come and pray and say, 'Oh, this is my family and those poor people out there, I wish somebody else would help them.' No, God put your church here for you to be here for them. And when he opens that door, and in that door comes a person that you don't think you can touch, he said, you go right over and you touch him. And you hug him. And they'll understand that they have misunderstood about God, about me. And when you do that, the answer to the same-sex attraction problem will be evident in your church, and your church will grow, and you will have love beyond measure for these people and the children that you don't want to lose. Your own children can have these problems. And I don't care who you are and how good you think you have done with your child. If your child has misinterpreted anything in his life and he ends up thinking in that direction, you love him. You bring him back. You treat him as if he is the most special person on the earth. You do what the father of the prodigal son did. You get out the robe and you throw it around him, dirt and all. And you hug him and you proclaim a feast. Because your son that was dead is now alive. And you can't be alive without God. And show him God. In the next few sessions, we're going to go deeper into these things. We're going to talk about the person himself. I'm going to talk to them and show you how you can actually begin to receive recovery from the gay problems. I look forward to talking to you then. Thank you.